This video is brought to you by my supporters on Patreon. Hey guys, I'm here with a video showing you how I made the casual outfit or the jacket portion of it for my Cammie cosplay. To create the pattern, I made a duct tape mock-up, and I had to look at a ton of reference photos and episodes to figure out and draw out that picture that you just saw there, which was my guide for her outfit, which is what I ultimately decided. I think this is what it looks like according to all of the images that I've seen. If you want to skip all this and not have to create a pattern because it is really complicated, I do have these patterns available on my store Envy or Etsy if you prefer shopping there, and if they're not up by now, they will be soon. I'm not sure when this video comes out, so. Anyways, what I'm doing here is taking all of those duct tape pieces, or that duct tape pattern that we made earlier, and I cut them into the pieces that it needed to be, like all these little puzzle pieces that her jacket has to it. And I'm transferring that to some just spare fabric that I have that I'm going to be using to create a mock-up. Make sure you've labeled all of your duct tape pieces before cutting it out, including which part's the top and which part's the bottom, or if anything needs to connect to a certain piece in order to help you identify where it goes. Otherwise, you're going to end up confused like I did because your girl forgot. So I don't have any footage of the next few steps, but it's not super important. It's kind of boring to watch. All I did was cut these pieces all out, sew them all together so I had a completed jacket, and then tried it on. If anything needed to be adjusted, I made little notes where that needed to happen and what needed to happen there. Luckily for me, this fit pretty well and it didn't need too many adjustments, so I was able to just work off of the jacket as is, like these pattern pieces as is, right away. And here's one of those short clips of me just working on the sleeves. This is the only piece I found that needed the most adjustments, because to make the sleeve pieces, while I traced the top to fit, like the top of the sleeve where it attaches to the armhole to fit the armhole that I had cut out for the jacket, the rest of the sleeve I used or made just by tracing a jacket sleeve that I already had, and that one was very, very much too big, so this is just me making all the adjustments to it. Anyways, once you have your pattern figured out, it's time to start cutting out the actual fabric. So what I do first is I separate them by color, because she has a few different colors going on in her jacket. And starting with the gray, although it doesn't matter what color you start cutting out first, obviously, I start cutting out all of these patterns. A good thing to remember here is that most of these pieces only need one cutout from each piece. So just remember to not have your fabric folded, because I know if you sew a lot like me, a lot of the times you're cutting on doubled up fabric because you need two pieces of each piece. It took a lot of kind of just tinkering with to figure out the best way to lay out all of these pieces so that I wasted the least amount of fabric. But I eventually got there and started cutting out the pieces. Now go ahead and do the same with all of the other colors. Now that all of the pattern pieces are cut out, it's time to start pinning and sewing everything together. So to start off, I pinned the sleeves together, the top parts. So the white part of the sleeves have these little like oval cutouts in them. One side is pink, one side is white. I went ahead and pinned those together, but then I set those aside because I decided to work on the main body of the jacket first. And when it came to the jacket, I decided to build the jacket from the bottom up. So I start with the lowest or farthest down section of the jacket and then sew everything, slowly working my way up the pattern until it's closed at the shoulders. So this part right here is the bottom section of the jacket. It's the silver part that kind of like goes down into these little flappy bits, I guess. I don't know how else to explain it. When you're looking at a reference photo, it's the bottom's gray part. I called it silver. It's gray. It's not silver. Anyways, it's the bottom gray part. And when it comes to these pieces, she has some piped seam details. At least that's what I translated them to be, if that's how you would say that. But she has this different color of gray going along the middle section of the gray lowest piece, and then she has these sections of pink stripes going in and up the jacket along the same gray piece. So I figured the best way to represent that or include that was using some piped seams. You can find piped seams at Joann's. That's where I found this. It's already pre-made, but if they don't have the color you need, you can also create your own. There are lots of tutorials on how to do that, and I'm sure I will eventually make one in the future. Anyways, once all of the piped seams were put into place and all of these pieces were connected, I went ahead and used a zipper foot and straight stitch to sew it all together. Now here I'm sewing on the green piece, which is probably the lowest green piece. Again, you're going to want to look at a reference photo to know what pieces I'm talking about, if I can even convey them correctly, because there's just so many pieces in so many different places that I can't really explain them because there's not necessarily a specific name for them. But I'm attaching this green piece that goes in this upward part near her waist, but then back down into the flappy bits to the gray. I'm attaching that to the gray and then sewing it into place, and then moving on by attaching the next gray sections on the inner side of her jacket and sewing that into place. Then I attach the green sections that is right next to that and right above that and sew that into place. The next piece to be attached is this gray section of her shirt that pretty much wraps all the way around the shirt. So this kind of evened everything out. So the next entire layer was entirely gray. Now it's time to attach the green section of the shirt, which is also like the shoulder side, I guess you could call it. So this is one of the last top pieces. After this, it's only the black piece that goes at the center of the back and the front. But this is the side piece, and I'm attaching that to the side. This piece is a little tricky to attach because there's no real signifier. Is that a word? There's no real way to tell where it goes. So instead, I had to try it on and just take a mental note or mark it with a pin of where it should sit so that the front point is in the middle of where it's when I'm wearing it, like it's in the middle of my chest, and then the back is going to line up where it lines up. It's kind of off to the side, but it's supposed to be off to the side. Once that's sewn together, I then can pin the black fabric into place and sew that together, as well as sew the shoulders shut. And I have an almost completed jacket. I have at least the completed body of it. Now I'm working on the hood. Her hood has this gray detailing on the side, so I'm pinning that into place and then sewing that down using a straight stitch. I used a straight stitch for this entire thing, by the way. I don't know why I keep clarifying that I'm using a straight stitch on this, but I am. Anyways, to create the hood pattern, I just traced around a hood that had a fit that I liked. So it was like a little bit baggy because it also has to be able to fit the wig under it as well. Once the gray was sewn into place around the edges that you can see, like the visible edges, the front edge of the hood, like where it sits around your face, I'm using white bias tape to line that edge and seal up those seams, make it look all nice, and add the white detailing that she has there. The hood was now done, and I sewed it onto the jacket. I also cut a small slit into the front of the jacket where there was like the opening between the two sides of the hood to create a little triangular indent just to make it easier to get on over and off of my head, because I did not make this so that it had any openings in it whatsoever. Opening as in like fixtures, as in I can't just unzip it or unbutton it or something. Anyways, here I'm working on the sleeves. I'm sewing this little white detail, this like rectangular strip that she has, onto the top of the sleeves. I've already sewn in the pink and white circular or oval-y pieces, and then I sewed the black bottom section onto the white section of the sleeves, and once that was sewn together, I sewed it shut. Now it was time to attach this band for the elastic to go through down at the wrist part of the sleeves. So I cut out this long rectangular strip of fabric. It was about 3 inches wide and as long as I needed it to be to fit around the sleeves. Pinned that into place and then sewed that into place. Then I took an elastic band that was made to fit around my wrist, strung it through. So when stringing this through, I pin one end at one opening, string the rest of the elastic through, and pin it at the other. This is going to gather your fabric, just be aware of that. And then once that was strung through, I sewed the elastic and the opening of the band shut, so everything was in place and the elastic wasn't just going to come loose and slip right through again. Now I could sew on the sleeves, and that's what I'm doing here. Now here I get a little bit jumpy with what I'm doing, like I jump around, but in this clip I have folded over the raw edges of the gray section and the green section and am sewing that down using thread that matches the color. Actually, I think for the gray I used black thread because I didn't have any gray thread, but for the green I used green thread. This just creates a nice clean looking hem. It is how all of the shirts that you wear, all the clothing that you wear, have the open edges finished. So there are more detailings on her jacket. This piece is this green rectangular piece that sits in the back on the lower green section of her back side, and all I'm doing here is pinning that into place and then sewing that down. Now we're moving on to cutting out these foam pieces. This is 2mm EVA foam or craft foam, and I'm cutting out about 11 of them because that's how many I needed of these pieces to fit on this sash piece that she has on her jacket. It's not like an actual sash, but that's the best way I can describe it. It has these little light gray detailings, like these light gray squares on this piece, and they're kind of like, they look almost armory but not armory. So to create that puffy shape, I took foam. I took 2mm EVA foam and I wrapped it in fabric. The fabric that I'm using for this is this fake leather fabric because I felt that looked, you know, kind of metally but not metally. Like her pieces look like they could be armor or metal, but at the same time they don't. To help fold over the fabric, I put little triangular notches at each corner so that it would fold easier, and I'm using contact cement to glue it all down. Once I was done with all 11 pieces, I set those all aside and move on to making the sash, which is this long rectangular strip of fabric. It looks like it's gray in her reference photos, but I felt like that was way too much gray in one section because the back and the front has a lot of gray on it. So I decided to go with black since it's going to be covered in light gray and the black's just going to be seen through bits of that. On the side of this strip, it does have white piping, or at least a white detail. Again, I decided piping is what it was supposed to be and what would represent it best. So I sewed that into place and then went through the very long process of sewing that all the way around the jacket. And when I mean all the way around, it starts in the front, have to go up and over the shoulder, and it ends in the back. So it's a little bit tricky and finicky to sew it if you decide to use a sewing machine like I did, just because you have to make sure you aren't sewing through other layers of fabric because your jacket is going to want to bunch up and you might get areas in it that you don't mean to. So at the front part, I did open up that seam between the gray and the green and stick some excess of this sash piece through and sew that shut again so that it has, you know, it just looks nice and neat and clean. In the back, I did not do that. I just cut off the excess because there is a black strip of detailing that goes there along the bottom, separating these two green pieces. The green like rainbow piece that goes into the flappy bits, not green, the gray rainbow piece that goes into the flappy bit, and the gray like main back piece. So to create this black detailing, I used black bias tape. I folded over one edge so that it was nice and neat, and I left excess at the other edge because, again, I just ripped open a seam a tiny little bit, stuck some excess through, and sewed it back shut. You'll see this in a bit. Oh my gosh, that was so much to say. I really hope I said everything I was thinking of and that it was understandable, because it was a lot, and I already forgot what I said because I said so much just then. Here's where I'm opening up that seam to stick some of the excess bias tape through in order just to have a nice clean edge right there. And finally, we're on to the last part, which is attaching these light gray armory pieces from earlier. I measured out how far I wanted them to sit apart, which was about 3/4 of an inch. Obviously, you can change this measurement if you feel it looks better one way or the other. And to secure those into place, I decided to put 4 little knots of embroidery thread in each corner, just because I didn't really want to use glue. So hers looks, it's just kind of floating on her jacket. There's no stitching or detailing to show how it's secured in place, so I assume gluing it would best mimic it. However, I didn't know how fabric glue would hold up with foam, and I didn't know how other glue would hold up with washing, and I wanted this to be easily washable. So I decided just to sew it in, and I chose 4 corners only because I felt like, if anything, it would look like those were little rivets or bolts, and I was happy with my decision. There is one bottom half, which is at the back, where I had to cut one of these in half, so I just kind of marked where I needed to cut it, folded over some fabric so it had a nice clean edge, and then just attached it with 2 rivets instead of 4. I don't think I have footage of that because this is where the video is going to end. So thanks for watching, guys. I hope you found this helpful. And stick around for more videos. I have the rest of her costume coming soon. Yeah, have a lovely day. Bye.